The diplomat who insulted Earth. The Galactic Peace Summit was held once every 5 years. On a giant floating station above the neutral planet Valar Prime, the leaders of 50 different species gathered. The halls were bright with gold lights and banners from many worlds. Everyone wore their best clothes and their sharpest smiles, but not everyone smiled with peace in their heart. At the center of the grand chamber, standing tall and proud, was Lady Zalira of the Solari Empire. She was beautiful, cold, and powerful. Her skin shimmered like silver. Her long hair moved without wind. She was known for her sharp mind and sharper tongue. And today, she was ready to speak. "Before we begin peace talks," Zalira said loudly, her voice echoing, "I ask why the humans are even here." The room fell silent. She turned slowly, eyes locking on one man, Commander Ryan Voss, the representative of Earth. He stood calmly, hands behind his back, wearing a simple black uniform. His face was unreadable. Zalira continued, "Earth is a young world, weak, chaotic. You send farmers and soldiers to represent you while others bring scholars and kings." A few chuckles came from the far side of the room. She smiled. "Tell me, Commander, can Earth even spell diplomacy yet?" Ryan didn't blink. He stepped forward. "I believe we spell it with silence, Lady Zalira," he said calmly, "because wise people let others finish insulting them before answering." The room went quiet. Then a few muffled laughs. Zalira's smile faded. She had expected anger, a loud defense, maybe even a demand for apology. But this cool reply? It irritated her. Worse, it interested her. The talks continued for hours. Trade routes, security zones, minor border conflicts. Ryan gave short, careful answers. He never raised his voice. He didn't brag. He didn't flirt. He didn't react to Zalira's little comments either. And that made her uncomfortable. Usually beings feared her, or tried to impress her. But this human, he didn't do either. He just watched, like he knew something, like he was waiting. That evening, the celebration began. Music played. Food from 100 worlds filled long silver tables. Drinks of all colors sparkled in glass orbs. Zalira stood on a balcony, staring down at the stars. She didn't enjoy these parties. She preferred control, not chaos. But something pulled her attention. From the corner of her eye, she saw Ryan leaning against a wall, holding a drink, alone, still calm, still unreadable. She hated that. So she approached. "Commander," she said, smoothly, "aren't you going to dance? Or are humans too stiff for joy?" He looked at her, then smiled softly. "We dance, but we don't perform for those who mock us." She raised an eyebrow. "Still hurt by earlier?" "Not hurt," he replied. "I've heard worse from better people." That made her blink. Then slowly, she laughed, a real laugh, short, sharp, surprised. "You're bolder than you look." He sipped his drink. "You're colder than you pretend." Now her smile returned, this time thinner. "Careful, Commander. In my culture, sharp words lead to sharp consequences." He leaned slightly closer. "In mine, they lead to sharp truths." The air between them changed. Tension, heat, something new. She narrowed her eyes. "You act like you have nothing to lose." He looked into her glowing silver eyes. "I lost everything once," he said softly. "Now I play with what's left." Her voice lowered. "What do you want, human?" He leaned in. "Exactly what you fear." She blinked. "And what's that?" He stepped back, smiled, and said one word, "Equality." Then he walked away, leaving her breathless and confused. That night Zalira couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed his words, his eyes, his strange calm. And she knew this human wasn't what he appeared, and she had made a mistake by calling him weak, a mistake she couldn't erase. The night that changed everything. The stars over Valar Prime were silent that night. But inside the upper tower of the galactic summit, emotions were not. Lady Zalira stood alone in her guest chamber, staring into a glass of golden liquid. Her silver dress shimmered under dim lights, but her eyes were sharp, like cold fire. She had never been shaken before, not by kings, not by war generals, but the human, Commander Ryan Voss. He had left her speechless, and that infuriated her. She remembered every word. Exactly what you fear. Equality. The arrogance, the nerve, the way he spoke like he was above her, even while standing below her rank. She told herself it didn't matter. But then she looked into the mirror and saw it. The truth. She wasn't angry because he insulted her. She was angry because he didn't fear her. Later that night, a soft knock came at her door. She expected her guards, but when the door slid open, it was him, Ryan, calm, hands behind his back, his black uniform crisp, his eyes steady. She didn't move. "This is not your level, human." He didn't flinch. "Then punish me or invite me in." She blinked, no fear, no flattery, just a quiet challenge. Zalira stepped aside. "Very well. You want truth? Let's talk." The conversation began, sharp and distant. Politics, war history, old treaties. But slowly things shifted. Rian poured drinks. She removed her gloves. Walls broke down piece by piece. And soon, they weren't discussing empires anymore. They were discussing pain and pride, and how hard it is to walk into a room where no one sees your worth. "Humans," Zalira whispered, "have fire in their eyes, but you burn too fast." Ryan looked at her. "Your people have perfect control, but you forget what it's like to feel alive." She leaned closer. "And what do you know about living?" He replied softly, "Enough to know that power doesn't come from blood, but from choice." That moment held still. A breath, a look, a spark. What happened next was not war. It wasn't love either. It was two powerful beings, raised in walls, choosing, for one brief night, to tear them down. Together. By morning, he was gone. No goodbye. No message. Just silence. Zalira stood alone again, her skin still warm, her heart confused, her pride shattered and reshaped. She stared at the spot where he stood the night before and whispered to herself, "What have I done?" 2 weeks later, in her homeworld medical chamber, alarms blared. Her body was changing. Too fast. Too strange. Elite physicians ran scans. Zalira sat cold and silent until the screen showed one word. Pregnant. Everyone froze. Solari women didn't get pregnant easily, especially not with non-Solari genes. The doctor whispered, "Do you remember who the father might be?" She stood slowly. Her silver eyes glowed with fury. "Bring me a list of Earth's laws." Her fury echoes through the stars. News doesn't travel slowly in the galaxy, especially not when it involves Lady Zalira, the pride of the Solari Empire, and especially not when the headline reads, "Alien Diplomat Pregnant by Human Commander. First hybrid in history confirmed." The summit was over, but the storm had just begun. In every system, news feeds lit up with rumors, opinions, and outrage. Some laughed, some panicked. Some whispered of war, but one person stayed silent. Commander Ryan Voss. He sat alone in his ship, far from Valar Prime, watching the news without emotion. The face of Zalira filled the screen, angry, glowing, and majestic. This pregnancy was not consented as union. Earth will answer for this dishonor. The message played over and over. Ryan said nothing, but his fingers drummed slowly on the table. On Solari Prime, Zalira stood before her council. They looked at her like she had brought poison into their home. "You expect us to allow this child to live?" one asked. "It's part human," another growled. "What if it spreads Earth's weakness into our line?" Zalira stood tall. "I did not ask for your approval." They blinked. She continued, "I will carry it. Because I must. But I will not be shamed by any of you. The council hesitated. She was still their strongest voice. Still untouchable, at least for now. Later, alone in her chambers, she touched her stomach. It didn't show yet. But it was there, growing, changing her, and worst of all, she dreamed about him. Ryan, the night they shared, the words, the fire, and the fact that he walked away. Suddenly, her ship alerted. Incoming message. From Earth. From Ryan Voss. She hesitated. Then, opened it. I won't apologize for the child. I won't fight for custody. But I will stand if you ever need me. I didn't do this to hurt you. I did it because I believed you'd be strong enough to face it. She slammed the tablet down. Tears stung her eyes. Angry ones. How dare he act like this was her challenge? How dare he make her feel like this was fate instead of failure? And worse, why did his words make her chest hurt? The Solari elite watched. Her every move. They expected her to break down, to leave the position, to vanish in shame. But she didn't. Instead, she stood firmer, colder, sharper. Her voice in the Senate grew louder. Her orders to her fleet came faster, and all across her empire, her enemies began to fear something new. Not just her, but the future inside her. On Earth, Ryan was called before. The Interworld Council. You slept with a Solari diplomat, one member said. Ryan remained calm. She invited me in. She's furious now. That's her emotion. I didn't lie to her. You knew what would happen? He paused. No. But I hoped for it. The council stared. Hoped? Ryan met their eyes. She's powerful, cold, proud, but not cruel. I saw someone buried under armor. I wanted that person to wake up. And somewhere far from both worlds, that person, Lady Zelira, stood in silence, alone in her ship, hand on her belly, eyes filled with questions. She whispered to herself, "What am I becoming?" And the baby changes her Lady Zelira had faced many battles in her life. She had spoken before kings, silenced rivals with her words, and stood unshaken through war negotiations. But nothing had prepared her for this. Pregnancy, not just a body changing, but something deeper. It started small. Her senses became sharper. She could hear heartbeats through walls, see more colors in starlight. Her voice grew stronger, her mind faster. Even her connection to Solari energy, normally calm and controlled, started to flare like wildfire. The doctors were confused. This is not normal Solari development, one said. The child is affecting her system. They didn't say it, but she knew what they feared. The human blood inside the baby. But Zelira was not afraid. She stood in her chamber, hand resting gently over her stomach. And for the first time, she felt something strange. Not pride, not anger, but warmth. Across the stars, on a quiet Earth outpost, Ryan Voss read a medical file sent by an anonymous source, encrypted, hidden, but meant for him. He opened it. Inside was one sentence. The child is unlike anything we've seen, both Solari and human, but also something new. Ryan stared at the message for a long time, then whispered to himself, "She's not just changing. She's awakening." Back on Solari Prime, the council watched her carefully. She was no longer the cold diplomat they knew. Her speeches were sharper, her orders more direct, but her eyes were brighter, alive. One evening, she stood before a star map of the galaxy, speaking with a younger Solari officer. "When I was your age," Zelira said, "I thought love was weakness." The officer looked surprised. "And now?" Zelira touched her belly. "Now I understand it's a kind of power our empire never taught us to control." Whispers spread, not just fear, curiosity. Some saw her as tainted, but others, especially the young, saw her as something new. A leader who didn't hide from emotion, a woman who changed, but didn't fall. Then came the offer. from a secret alliance. A group of worlds, some human, some alien, who feared the old ways were dying. They sent her a message. We believe the child you carry may bring balance or chaos, but either way, we want to stand with you. Zalira didn't answer right away. She stood by her window that night watching the stars. Her reflection looked different now, softer, stronger. Then she whispered, "This child is not a mistake. He is a message." On Earth, Ryan received a private message from her, just 3 words. "It's a boy." He smiled for the first time in weeks and replied, "He'll have my calm. And your fire." She becomes his protector. The skies above, Earth's outer diplomatic station, were quiet. Too quiet. Inside the station, Commander Ryan Voss reviewed old files from the Solari Empire. Not military data, personal records, birthrights, exile laws, ancient rituals. He wasn't preparing for war. He was preparing for a future, for her, for the child. Suddenly, alarms rang through the station. Unregistered ship entering attack. Range. Shields down. Internal breach detected. Ryan rushed to the command deck. "Who is it?" he asked. A young officer answered, pale. "Solari Elite Squad, but it's not official. No markings. No codes." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Not from the Council." "No, sir. They came to erase something quietly." He knew exactly what, or who, they were here for. Him, the father. The unwanted variable. A single blast rocked the station. Lights flickered. Security doors overridden. The soldiers had entered. Ryan stood his ground. He grabbed a small shield pulse and stepped into the hallway. He didn't plan to win. He just needed to survive long enough. But before the soldiers reached him, a bright silver light filled the corridor. Then came the voice, sharp, royal, full of thunder. "Enough." They turned, and there she was, Lady Zalira. Her armor glowed with Solari energy, her eyes burned with heat, and in her arms was a pulse weapon she had never used before. She stepped between the soldiers and Ryan without hesitation. "You are not here by council order," she said coldly, "and you will not harm the father of my child." One soldier stepped forward. "He weakens our future." She raised her weapon. No, he made it stronger. With a single wave of her hand, energy exploded from her body. A protective field. So powerful it bent the hallway walls. She didn't just attack, she shielded Ryan with her own life. When the smoke cleared, the soldiers lay on the floor, alive, but stunned. Zalira lowered her hand, breathing heavy. Ryan stood frozen. "You came," he whispered. She turned slowly. "Of course I came," she said. "You gave me strength, even when I hated you." They stood there in silence for a long moment. Then she stepped closer. "You once said you did this not to break me, but to change me." He nodded. "Yes. I didn't believe you then. And now?" She touched her belly. "Now I believe. This was never about revenge. It was about building something no one expected." The Council of Earth tried to question her. The Solari Council tried to silence her, but neither could deny what she had done. She had protected a human, not out of duty, not out of shame, but out of choice. Later that night, Ryan sat beside her in the medical bay. She was tired. The child was strong, growing fast. "You scared me," he said softly. She gave a weak smile. "Good. Now you know how it feels." He chuckled. "Do you regret it?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, because now I know who I really am. Truths revealed in war and love." The stars above the Earth station blinked calmly. But inside the quiet medical room, Lady Zalira was not calm. She sat beside Ryan, her back straight, her hands folded tightly. She had fought soldiers, shut down assassins, and faced the judgment of 2 governments, but now she was about to ask something harder, something real. "What did you lose?" she asked. Ryan blinked, looking up from the small device in his hand. What? That night at the summit. You said, I lost everything once. He stayed silent for a few moments. Then he finally answered. My family. Zalira's voice dropped. Your wife? My sister. My mother. My little niece. He looked away. They were on a neutral colony. We were promised protection. Her eyes narrowed. What happened? The Solari Empire, he said quietly, changed the borders during a dispute. Your soldiers removed the human citizens, but not before a storm hit. A solar flare destroyed half the station. She froze. That mission, I remember. We were told there were no survivors. There were none, he said. But I heard their final message, and I knew who had left them behind. Zalira stood, her body tense. You came to punish me, she whispered. Ryan didn't deny it. Yes, I wanted you to feel powerless. Like I did. She looked at him sharply. Then everything was a plan. He shook his head. No, I thought it was at first. But then, you surprised me. She laughed bitterly. You tricked me into carrying your child. I didn't trick you, he said. You made your own choice that night. Silence. Zalira turned away, her silver eyes burning. So, it was never about love. Ryan stood now too. No, but it became something else. He stepped closer. I saw your strength, your pain, your loneliness. I saw a woman hiding behind power. She turned to him. And what do you see now? He looked into her eyes. A woman who changed her whole world, just to protect a child. Tears welled in her eyes. But they didn't fall. Solari do not cry. Not even now. She sat again. I thought I hated you. You did. She exhaled. I still don't know if I trust you. That's okay, he said gently. But the child will. They sat in silence, not enemies, not lovers, but two people who understood the cost of pain and the price of peace. Later that night, Zalira looked through old holoscreens. She found records of the failed mission Ryan spoke of, and for the first time, she saw what her empire had hidden: civilian names, false reports, and the quiet truth. He was right. Her voice trembled as she whispered, We killed them, and lied. She looked down at her stomach and whispered, Not again. Never again. In that moment, something inside her changed. Not pride, not politics, but purpose. She wasn't just carrying a child. She was carrying a new future. The mother of the future. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so silent. Representatives from over 50 planets sat waiting. Cameras floated silently in the air. The galaxy was watching. Today, Lady Zalira of the Solari Empire would speak. She entered the hall without guards. No royal cloak, no crown. But her presence still turned every head. Because this time, she wasn't there as a diplomat. She was there as a mother. Behind her, Commander Ryan Voss stood quietly, watching. They hadn't planned this moment together, but he knew she needed to do it her way. This was her battle, her voice, her future. Zalira walked to the center of the room. She looked at every being sitting around her. Some stared with fear, others with doubt, but many with hope. She raised her voice, strong, steady, and full of fire. I once believed power came from blood, from silence, from control. I was wrong. She paused. I carry a child born of two worlds, a child some called a mistake, a threat, a shame. Her eyes narrowed. But I call him a future. Whispers filled the chamber. One elder from her own council stood. This child is not of Solari bloodline. Alone, he said. How can you stand here and claim pride? Zalira answered, without hesitation. Because pride without truth is nothing. I will not hide my child. I will not reject the human who helped create him. I will not erase the part of me that changed, another voice spoke. A human diplomat. Do you stand with Earth now? Zalira turned her head. I do not stand with Earth. I do not stand with Solari. I stand with what both could become, if they choose understanding over fear. Ryan smiled quietly from the back of the room. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't rebellion. It was evolution. After the speech, as she left the chamber, a young Solari girl ran up to her. Is it true, she asked, that the child will be the first of both? Zalira knelt and nodded. Yes, the girl whispered. Maybe one day. I'll marry someone from another world too. Zalira smiled for the first time without defense. Then make sure you choose someone who sees all of you, even the parts you hide. That night, in a quiet room aboard a neutral ship, Zalira sat beside Ryan. In her arms, she held their newborn son. Tiny, warm, alive. She looked down at the child, half human, half Solari, but completely real. Ryan touched her hand. What will you name him? She looked at him, then at the stars outside the window. Kyle, she said. It means light between two worlds. She kissed the child's forehead and whispered, They called you impossible. But you are proof that love, even unexpected, can change everything. And across the galaxy, news spread of a child, born from two enemies but raised by choice, by courage, and by a woman once feared, now known as the mother of the future.